sometimes sad, she's sometimes happy. She's doing things to make her life less crappy. Trying a treatment that's new on the scene. Let's sit back and talk about ketamine.
Welcome to Ketamine Insights, a podcast about mental health and psychedelic medicine from a patient's perspective. I'm excited that Lynn is back again for this episode on asking for help with ketamine treatments. We don't publish episodes on a strict schedule, so if you enjoy Ketamine Insights, please go into your podcast app and subscribe. That way, you'll be notified every time a new episode comes out. Ketamine Insights is meant to be a cumulative podcast, so if you're new here, please listen to Season 1 first. In those first episodes, we explore foundational questions like, what are the different ways to take therapeutic ketamine? What can I expect when I go in for a ketamine infusion? How do I make the most out of every ketamine experience? And we talk in depth in Season 1 about the two main philosophical approaches to ketamine care. Please take a moment to rate and review the show on whatever platform you're using, whether it's Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, whatever. That's how the algorithm knows to suggest us to new people. Now, here's our episode on shame and community and asking for help. Enjoy. Okay, how's it going, Lynn?
Pretty good. How you doing, Molly?
I'm good, thank you.
Good.
It's gloomy and rainy in Chicago, but
Okay. Yeah, it's sticky and just kind of nasty and sunny here outside DC.
summertime in the swamp.
Yes, totally.
Okay, so today we're going to talk about shame and community and asking for help. So I was going to start with a story. When I was first thinking about doing ketamine treatments, I knew I didn't have really the funds to do it by myself. So I think you might remember this. I think I reached out to you. Yeah, I reached out to like
remember.
everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do almost like 9-10 years ago or something. Or not
No,
even
it wasn't
long
that long ago. It was like 2019, I
Okay.
think.
Oh, I felt like it was even longer. Okay.
Yeah, because I did ECT in 2018 and then ketamine started in 2019.
Why did I feel like it was so long ago? Yes. Yeah. Okay.
I don't know. But it was a big deal for me because I always felt like part of me always felt and still sometimes feels like the depression was my fault. Like I should have like just been wiser or more, just smarter, should have been able to figure it out somehow and like treat myself better or whatever. Like there had to have been a way that I could have avoided this. And so so you're embarrassed.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of stigma and everything. So when I like made that announcement and reached out on social media and like, my family reached out on social media, it was also kind of like a coming out for me. Like it wasn't just asking for money. It was also like, hey, this is something I suffer with. There was a lot of people in my life who didn't know at the time.
Yeah.
And it felt good to tell people just because when you don't tell people, you feel like a liar, like you're hiding kind of all the time and pretending that you're healthier than you are. So anyway, this one time during that campaign, I think the campaign lasted like a month or something when people were sending in money online, which was really cool. Like it really changed my perspective going into the ketamine treatments, by the way. Like it was like, I felt like I had all this support. It was really, really helpful in that way too.
Awesome.
Not just the money, but like the just support from all over. It was really cool.
That is cool.
But during that like month as it was going on, I was at the Irish Heritage Center here in Chicago with a cousin of mine, and like one of his daughters was playing. It was this big kind of festival and she was playing a musical instrument. We were watching the concert and stuff. And as we were leaving, he's a little bit older than me, and he took like, I think like $300 and shoved it in my pocket as we were leaving. And he kind of like grabbed me by the shoulders and he like told me in my ear, like, if you ever need anything. And he just like really, he kind of shook me almost. And I was like, well, shit, John, like, there was like a moment, it's like something clicked for me because I knew that he was really telling the truth. Like I knew he would be mad if I needed something and I didn't tell him and that he cared, And ever since then, I've really had this sensation, like I've really had this feeling that like I might go down, like this illness might take me down, but it's not gonna it's not going to be because I didn't ask for help.
Yeah.
Like, it's not going to be because I was meek about it. There's something that just like struck me in that moment. Like, it's too arbitrary. It's too arbitrary that some people have money and some people don't have money. It's too arbitrary that some people get sick and some people don't get sick. Like, I'm not going to pretend it's my fault. I'm not going to go down like this. If I do, like, I don't mean to get dark, but like, if it does bring me down, there's not going to be anybody at my funeral who's like, oh, I wish I had known, you know?
Yeah.
What I mean?
Yep.
Like, I'm going down like a drowning woman, screaming and yelling, like everybody's going to know. And honestly,
Yeah.
it felt like such a relief to know that and to have that kind of in my back pocket, that like, it's just not going to be quiet. And I've never talked to my cousin about that. I don't know. I'm sure he has no idea that he had that effect on me. But I think it's also like a story about how you never know what effect you have on other people. That like, he thinks he gave me $300 and I feel like he changed my perspective on my illness, really.
Yeah.
Like, I feel better after that moment. You know what I mean? Than I did before. And I don't know. My therapist once told me that disclosure is the antidote to shame.
Oh, interesting. So like, instead of holding it in and just feeling that shame alone, once you share it with the world, you don't feel the shame anymore.
Right.
Yeah.
That like,
That's interesting.
it chips away at the feeling of shame, like the more
Yeah.
open and honest you are about it.
That's cool.
Yeah, which I really like that.
Yeah,
It's so
I like that
succinct.
a lot.
Disclosure is the antidote to shame.
Yeah, I do like that. That's cool. Interesting.
So, yeah, I think
Yeah.
it definitely happens that I still feel ashamed of my illness occasionally, but like, it definitely helps that everybody knows. You know what I mean? I think that for me, it definitely was true that disclosure was a big antidote.
And not only does it like make you feel better and take away some of that shame, it sounds like, but it also is like, has actually helped you in like some tangible ways, in that you were able to access ketamine treatment. For
Definitely.
example, right? I mean, that's huge. Asking for help led you to be able to access this treatment. That is just
literally
been so incredibly helpful. Yeah.
Yes.
Because like you said, it's
Yeah.
totally arbitrary that some people have money and they're like, oh yeah, I can just access these really expensive treatments, and some people don't. So
Right.
good for you for asking
We
for
don't
help,
live-
people for helping.
Yeah, and people for helping. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, it came down to like, I was like, we don't live in a meritocracy.
Exactly.
Like, we just don't.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm not going to punish myself as if I deserve the bad things that have happened to me in life. Life does enough of that by itself.
Yeah. That's really powerful. That's huge. Good
So-
for you for just like, for doing that. That must have been hard. I remember that very clearly when you did that on social
Thank you.
media. And it was like, that was huge. And I remember thinking that must have been hard to just be so open and so vulnerable about what was happening. And that I also remember that you had a huge response of people being really supportive and giving money, and people just had like putting out heartfelt responses of, wanting to support you. And
I felt really lucky. I think it also can be like a good example, right? Like everybody needs help at some different
So true.
point in their lives. And so the more we ask for help, the more other people are encouraged to do the same thing, I think.
so true. No, you're right. I feel like, yeah, seeing you, I was just thinking like, yeah, if I were in your shoes, yeah, oh my God, like what would I do? And how would my network's response be? Yeah, seeing someone else do that demonstrates to others, that like, oh, maybe I could do that if I were in the same boat,
Yeah.
We all need to see someone else do it.
It's important for like, even when you're not asking for help, it's important to feel like you could get it if you needed it.
Yeah.
I feel like, I think I read this online somewhere at some point that like, we think we're like, it's a character strength to be able to pull yourself up by your bootstraps and be like a self-made person or whatever.
Yeah.
And then I read online at somewhere that like, feeling like you have to rely on yourself is actually a trauma response. And I was like, oh shit, that actually does make sense.
I know. Totally.
Like, we're interdependent people, animals, whatever.
Yeah, yeah.
Like we're naturally interdependent, and feeling like you can't be interdependent is actually dangerous.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I had a friend recently who lives in Portland, and she had this kind of like a freak injury. She was like playing futsal and had ruptured her Achilles tendon.
Oh God.
Which I'd never even heard of something like this being ruptured. It wasn't even like in the middle of like doing something cool. Like she just was like turning the ball and just like completely ruptured the tendon. And then, had to have multiple surgeries and was like in multiple casts and, in like a little scooter, just was like really out. She just now is like starting to walk and bike and stuff again several months later, which is a really bad injury. And I found out about it because she sent out an email to a group of friends saying, I need help, basically, and saying just like updating people. And she set up a meal train for herself, and she lives alone, like part-time. Her partner comes in part-time, and she said, my New Year's resolution this year was to be better at asking for help. And I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. Like
kind of good timing in a way.
Yeah, totally. And at first I was a little bit like, set up a meal train for yourself? I was like, this is my first reaction, honestly. And I felt like awkward about this. Was like, this is a little awkward. Set up a meal train for yourself. You almost want to like nudge someone and be like, can you set up a meal train for me? Like I'm desperately going to need this. I'm not going to be able to cook for myself. It's going to be ridiculously expensive to like get a bunch of meals delivered, But she was just like, you know what? This is what I need. Can people bring me food? Can please you bring me food? And these are things I don't like. Or can you have meals delivered? And I need help. I'm going to need help for months.
That's so great.
Yeah, I know. And at first, like my honest reaction was a little bit like, that's a little awkward. Then I was like, actually, that's good for her. Like, that makes sense. Why do we have to wait for others? Like, what if you don't have friends or family that automatically like, oh, we're going to set up a meal train for you? Like not everyone is just going to jump to it and do that. Like if you need the help, ask for the help, and a bunch of people responded. She had a whole bunch of people that for months were bringing meals. And like I sent, because I'm on the other side of the country, I like sent gift certificates for meal delivery. And, it was just like people were sending messages and care packages and stuff like that. And she had this whole like email thing set up where she was sending notes about what was happening, updates and everything. And it was really nice to just hear from her on what was happening.
And it builds community too, right?
Did,
like you all probably, everyone who participated felt closer together, and
totally.
Like we can do this together kind of thing.
Yeah. No, I know. I appreciated
so nice.
it. I appreciated it. And I felt like, what a cool idea of like how she was better able to take care of herself. Like I could imagine if I were in that situation, I would just be like sitting at home, like in my bed, being grouchy and be like, I wish people would take better care of me. Why isn't anyone helping me? And like maybe not brave enough to be like, you know what? I'm just going to put myself out there and ask for the help I need, because it's hard. And maybe you feel embarrassed or something,
Yeah. And often like in a lot of cases, especially I feel like with mental illness, like you don't necessarily know what you need.
Yeah, totally.
And that can be like a very different problem altogether. Like if you don't know what to ask for, it's like I've been in that situation before too, where you're just like, I just need help. Like somebody just help me. Yeah. And that is, that's a different kind of, that's more for like your closest circle to try to figure out like how they can possibly lift you up and get you in a better place. But I feel like whenever you do have like a specific ask, that's when it's like that's when like a big group of people can pull together.
Yeah.
And not everybody, a specific ask is not, it's like when, people say that after like someone passed away, like, let me know if I can do anything. Yeah. And it's like, that's not actually
helpful. Yeah.
Yeah.
In general, that's not really that helpful. But when it's like, you're like, I need food, like every day I need food, or I need someone to just like send me a text message to say hello or something like that. Like if there's something specific that's helpful, right? Or I need someone to find me a specialist in this, like help me do this research on a specialist, like some specific things.
Right. Yeah. I think that's a great example, because like navigating your way through the medical system can be such a challenge.
Yeah.
And the research, you can get buried in that kind of research and not, it's very like overwhelming. It's very easy to get overwhelmed, and to be able to like make discrete requests like that of people, I think can be really, really helpful.
Yeah.
Because, you know, from the outside, they're looking at you like, God, I hope she's okay.
Yeah.
You know, without a clue of what to do.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think like with ketamine treatments in particular, there tend to be, I don't know, there's like maybe 3 things that you will usually need help with. We've talked about some of them in past episodes before. Someone to keep you company and be super nice to you during and after your ketamine treatments. So if you're doing a lozenge at home, you might need someone just to kind of like be your sitter and keep you company. And then we've also talked about, you and me, Lynn, I think came up with a bunch of ideas of things to do like after an infusion and like just fun things to do while you're
Coming
more
down.
neuroplastic.
Yeah. Like go get ice cream.
Right. Yeah. I think we thought of roller skating too, which now that I think of it is like maybe the day or 2 after, not the day of.
Yeah, because it could be a little dangerous.
It'd be a little dangerous, yeah.
I saw someone roller skating through the airport the other day, by the way. Which was like, isn't that wild? Like she was just flying. And I was like, what a way to get to your gate, I guess. But it's a little dangerous. And is that legal?
I feel exactly 2 ways about that. Right.
Yeah,
like part of me is like, you can't do that. And part
I know.
of
And
me
then
is
you're also
like,
like, I guess that's kind of smart, actually. You know? Yeah, I know.
Right.
I've been thinking about that
hilarious.
lady. I'm like, wow, yeah. Interesting. She's brave.
Yeah. Like you brought those roller skates in.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, I know.
I wonder how many other people who saw her like are still thinking about her too.
I know, totally. I was sitting next to some people that were laughing about her for a long time. Yeah. Like I thought about engaging them in conversation, but I let it be. It was fun. I've thought about her regularly. I'm sure other people are too. And she was flat. She was like styling too, you know?
Oh, I love it.
It was amazing.
Watching someone who really knows how to roller skate is so cool.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would love to be there someday. That's like maybe like, you know, when I'm in my 50s, going to get into skating. Hopefully I've not hurt myself.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's like, skate dancing is like such a cool thing to be able to do.
Anyway, we digress.
Okay, so another, we digress. Another thing that you might need is rides home from the clinic. Someone to pick you up and take you home after you've had an infusion or an intramuscular injection, when you're a little shaky on your feet. Finally, like I was talking about before, a lot of us will need help with money to pay for the ketamine treatments. I think we might talk about fundraising on a different episode, like talk about like all the different ways to possibly raise money for ketamine treatments, because even where, like in Australia and stuff, where psilocybin and MDMA are legal for mental illness,
I didn't
they're
know they
still
were.
like, I think psilocybin treatment, I can't remember which one it was. The estimation is like $15,000 or $20,000 right now. Yeah.
That's insane.
Yeah,
Wow.
it's really
It
takes so much time is the expensive part. Like people need to sit with you. Those medications, the trip lasts for like 4 hours, 8 hours, and someone needs to sit with you the whole time. So, and that person needs to be trained, obviously, and there aren't a lot of them available.
Yeah. So you're paying for like the expertise of that person and their time. Interesting. Yeah. Okay. Huh. I wonder what it costs in like Portland, you know, in Oregon, where psilocybin is now legal. But then I think they're not, it's like they're therapists, but they're not doctors that have to be with you. I'd be curious to know what that is.
Yeah, I wonder too, like just in psychedelic ecosystem nowadays, there's a lot of conversation about like accessibility versus training. Yeah. And like, can people who aren't that well trained do the sitting? Because if we wait for everybody to be well trained, we're going to lose a lot of people in the meantime. Yeah. And there's just going to be a lot of suffering waiting for all these therapists and physicians to get trained up. And at the same time, like there's a huge potential for abuse if there's not any kind of certification, no kind of like way to tell who's a quack and who knows what they're doing. Yep. So I think like it's also one of those things that like shouldn't be a market, you know, like just because it's rare doesn't mean it should be expensive. Yeah. But again, I digress. I think like the first thing you want to do when you're thinking about asking for help is like I find this really difficult all the time, is I tend to assume that people know what I'm going through and that they have some kind of sense of how I'm struggling. And it's just not the case.
Yeah.
People have no idea, and they don't know how bad it really is. And I found, like, looking back, I feel like people, like in my experience, people don't want to believe that you're doing as badly as you are. When you're doing really badly, and especially with mental illness, it's often an invisible disease.
Absolutely.
You just, it's very, you know, we tend to isolate when we're not doing well. And you definitely tend to isolate when you're actually crying and suffering. You know what I mean? You don't do that out at a coffee shop with a friend. So I think it's very easy for people to tell themselves the happy story and tell themselves that you're probably doing better and you're on your way up or whatever. I think, like, some ways, like, people don't want to believe that it can happen to them, so they don't want to believe that it can happen at all.
Yeah.
And I once heard this quote. There's this woman who wrote this this book called The Body in Pain. She's a Harvard professor. Her name's Elaine Scarry. And she wrote this quote. It says, "To have great pain is to have certainty. To hear that another person has pain is to have doubt." Isn't that, it's like pretty dark and crazy, but I feel like it's happened to me that, like, I even do that to myself sometimes. Like, I'll be in a lot of pain and 2 weeks later I'll be like, it wasn't that bad. Yeah. And then I'll have that same pain over again. I'm like, this is horrible.
Like, this is the worst pain ever. And then you look back on it like, what was that really like? Was that bad?
I feel like women going through birth, this happens to them all the time. Like, your husband can't believe it's that bad.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Or you look back on it, you're like, it wasn't that bad. And then during it, this is the worst thing ever. Why would anyone ever have a baby? It's horrible. Right. Yeah.
And there's nothing, you're like certain of nothing more than you're certain of, like, this is unbearable pain. This is not okay.
Yeah.
So I think like there is something about that. Like, when you tell someone you're hurting, like, it's weird, but their first inclination is to be like, nah, you're okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
It's true. Yeah. We want to think everyone's okay. We want to think that.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's helpful. Like, you know, that's our sort of ingrained optimism or whatever, but it also leads to, like, you writing off people who are trying to reach out. And one way I've found to counteract that impulse in people is just to, like, tell them a very specific story, like, back to specifics, right? Like, if you can tell them a story about how much you're struggling, it really helps them. Like, it gives them something to, like, latch onto. Like, I feel like physicians always say, like, you know, rate your pain on 1 to 10, and it just feels so amorphous and impossible.
I hate that scale. Yeah. And 1 to 10 is, like, different for everybody. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, oh God. Yeah.
I had a experience the other day at a doctor's office. I went to a specialist, and it was like on my way to the exam room, you know, they stop you and, like, take your blood pressure, your weight, whatever. It was like kind of in this hallway, and this woman is typing in my blood pressure and my weight. And then she, like, doesn't even really look up from the computer, and she goes, "Do you have any concerns of a family, psychosocial, emotional, or spiritual nature?" And I was like,
all of those things? Yeah, what concern? Like, that's so weird.
Wasn't it? I was like, and there was another woman, like, waiting to take me to the exam room. And I'm sitting there in this hallway, and I just turned to her, and I was like, of course.
Yeah. Like, do you want to talk for a couple hours? I mean, how long do you have?
I'm a person.
Yeah.
And then she's just she maintained the, like, complete matter of fact, like, detached nature of it. And she was like, "What are your concerns?" And I was like, and it was a hematologist's office. So I was like, what does this have to do with, like, I don't even know what to tell you. So I was like, I have treatment-resistant depression. She's like, rate your concern from 1 to 10. I was like, am I in, like,
what the hell? That's so weird.
I was also worried, like, I'm not trying to get hospitalized today.
No.
Like, if I say I'm a 9 or a 10, am I going to get hauled out?
Okay, like, they're going to put you in a straitjacket? Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, my God.
So I was like, I don't know, like 8? And she was like, okay, and then they sent me to the exam room. And then I'm waiting in the exam room for half an hour for the doctor to come in, thinking about all of my family and socioeconomic and spiritual concerns and like how I would answer that question. It was horrible.
That's so weird. That is so weird. That's actually messed up.
It's messed up because it's just a perfect like microcosm of how the medical system is designed to check boxes and not to care for people.
Yeah.
Like someone's thought, if we put that question in, we'll be doing that like wraparound care that matters.
Yeah.
It's like
and
that
just get a quick answer from someone. Just ask them scale of 1 to 10, Most people don't have any concerns in those issues,
what are you gonna, like,
yeah, most people just normal, no concerns.
Most people are normal, right? Most people are normal and wouldn't have these concerns. Mm-hmm. This laundry list of every type of concern that anyone could possibly have.
Which, if you don't have any concerns in those areas, like I don't think you're actually human. But okay, whatever.
It made me think about like I remember one time I was telling someone, an old friend, about so when I wake up, I started waking up really early in the morning, like 3 a.m. Mm-hmm. and not going back to sleep. And my doctors started looking into like treatments for insomnia. Mm-hmm. And finally to one of them, I was like, I don't think it's insomnia because I don't try to go back to sleep.
Oh.
And they were like, oh, well, why not? And I was like, oh, because like, when I wake up in the morning, I have like terrible, like violent, intrusive thoughts all the time. So I have to get out of bed and do something else. And my psychiatrist in particular was like, excuse me?
Yeah.
And it had never occurred to me to tell that particular symptom to my psychiatrist or anyone else because first of all, it just wasn't my major concern. I had a way to cope with it immediately. You just get up and do stuff. And second of all, it just happened so early in the morning. I don't know. It never made the list of symptoms. And so once I told my psychiatrist about it, he started, it kind of really changed the way he was thinking about treating the quote unquote insomnia. Mm-hmm. And I was telling a friend of mine this, and she was like, oh, that's like, what kind of thoughts do you have in the morning? Mm-hmm. And I was telling her, and she was like, that's horrible. That's horrible. And I was like, well, yeah, like, how do you think this goes? Like, and that goes back to me, like, assuming that people know what you're going through.
Yeah.
They have no idea what you're going through.
Yeah.
And they wouldn't guess that you're having weird, violent thoughts every morning. That's not a normal thing.
No. Well, that sounds really scary.
Yeah, it's super scary and horrible.
Yeah.
And it was just it was like, it made me realize like how people they just have no idea what you're going through until you tell them.
Yeah,
that's simple.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah, it's a very good point. It's a way to be very concrete about it because that's scary. Yeah, people don't know.
Right. And if you tell them like it's a 8 out of 10, like that doesn't get it across.
Okay. It sounds like you're sad.
Right. That sounds bad. Right. Yeah. But it's not. It's much easier to discount the 8 out of 10 than it is to discount like waking up in the morning and having terrible thoughts immediately. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So anyway, I think it's basically just a way to get buy-in when you're looking for help. Like, and then I think the other thing that is helpful is like to really talk about expectations. Mm-hmm. So like we were saying before about like get as specific as you can. Mm-hmm. I think with ketamine, like especially with infusions or with lozenges, if someone is sitting for you or driving you home, it's really helpful to let them know what they can expect from you. Mm-hmm. If you've been through an infusion before, you kind of know and you can say like, I'm going to be loopy, I'm going to be like this. Yeah. And if you haven't been through an infusion or an intramuscular injection before, you can check out season number 1, episode number 5. We talked about this back then. We kind of went through this step by step, and you can share that episode, of course. And I think like another thing you can do talking about specific instructions is like for someone who's picking you up, if you can give them things to do, like bring sunglasses, like please turn the radio off before I get in the car, like little things like that it doesn't just help you when you get out of the infusion. It also helps them feel prepared, for what they're walking into, because a lot of people like, they don't know if you're going to be crying. They don't know if they don't know if they can handle it. Mm-hmm. And then I think like the bigger picture of expectations as well. Like the fact that your brain is more elastic means that the better your experience is in those 72 hours after an infusion, the more you're rewiring your brain to be happier.
Yeah.
And to have happier habits and to have happier thought patterns. And so I think that really helps people understand that like this is a crucial turning point. It can be, and that, you know, it's worth putting other things aside to try to like take advantage of that opportunity in those 72 hours.
Yeah. Yeah. So don't turn on the news. Let's not talk about the news. Don't ask like questions about like touchy, difficult subjects, or like don't like if they're going to like answer the phone and have like a like argument with their partner or their mom or something, like let's like don't do any of that. Right.
Yeah.
Like,
it's
keep
like
it light.
Literally for those 72 hours, you need like actual good vibes only.
Yeah.
Like, truly.
Yeah. That's so important. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. And like it can also be a great time to just like talk about cool shit. Like, you know, let the person who has gone through the infusion lead the way and just see what things occur to them, see what crazy, you know, foods they want. I remember having a mango lassi after the first time I ever had an infusion. And I was just like, this is the best flavor I've ever tasted in my time, you know, so it can be really fun. And then finally, I think like the last thing to do to like lead up to having someone help you with ketamine infusions is just like share what you're worried about. Ask them what they're worried about. Have like an intentional conversation leading up to it, because it creates the reality, like not just the perception, but the reality that you're in it together.
Okay.
And that's really the trick, right? Is to like bring people from the outside to the inside of, you know, like you're fighting shoulder to shoulder now. It's not you against the world or you against the illness. It's you people together. It's a community trying to solve this problem that in the end, like it just sucks so bad. It deserves the attention. And that's like, I feel like the most important point is not like how to ask for help, but to ask for help.
Yeah.
Because when you do it, you're asserting that you're worth saving. And I feel like it's important for people to hear over and over again that they're worth helping, because it's just true. And we tend to, especially when we're super depressed or suffering with all kinds of different things that people suffer with in their lives, like it's very easy to not want to bother people.
Yeah. Yeah. You're carrying all that shame. You just sit with it, but don't want to do anything. Don't want to take it to anybody else. What was it? What's the antidote to shame again?
Disclosure.
Disclosure is the antidote to shame. Yeah. I love that. Yeah.
Right.
I'm going to remember that.
And I
That's
put
really
myself
good.
like, I think about like putting myself in my cousin John's shoes, you know, and if this situation was reversed and him or somebody else that I love was like thinking, oh no, I can't tell Molly because it'd be such a burden.
Yeah.
It just like breaks your heart a little bit to think of someone feeling that way.
We all assume that people aren't holding things back from us, but they are. Yeah.
You're right.
So,
right.
Yeah, it's huge.
It is. And also like, do you know of anybody, is there anybody in your life who won't ask for help when they need it that comes to mind?
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Yes.
And it's honestly such a pain in the ass.
Yeah, totally.
Like it's not helpful actually when
it's
people won't ask for what they need.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. 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 I know.
The closer you are to them, the more of a pain in the ass it is.
Yes. Yeah. No, you're like, yeah, can I? Yes. Oh yeah. Yeah. I've got like within my family, there are a lot of issues with this. Yeah.
And it's like you're supposed to read their mind and whatever. There's a million downstream negative consequences of people not asking for what they need.
If you had just let me know, or let all of us know all of the suffering, all of these issues, like we just could have helped you maybe years ago or days ago, you know, there's so much. Yeah. You don't have to go it alone.
Right. You don't have to go it alone. And the truth is you're not going it alone.
Yeah.
So Don't make it harder on everybody else.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, it's sad. And it really, I think so much of it is about shame.
Yeah.
You know, like we get stuck in shame and that sucks. So we try to keep things a secret. Yeah. Whether it's mental health, addiction, other things that we think are somehow bad.
Right. Like it can depend on the illness or whatever. It depends on the level of stigma, like how open people are to admitting that they need help or whatever. And
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's very clear that like shame and stigma have a lot to do with it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, yeah. So I don't know. I think like the upside is that like there's so many positive downstream consequences to actually asking for help, whether it's building community, setting a good example, like actually getting the help that you need, et cetera, et cetera. So
yeah,
that's the flip side of it. But
yeah, I love it.
Anyway, thanks so much, Lynn.
All right. Thanks, Molly.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for spending time with us today. I hope you enjoyed the show. If you did, please take a moment, think about someone who has helped you, someone you might need help from, or someone that you'd like to help. Then go ahead and share this episode with them. Maybe thank them, make a specific request, maybe offer them a helping hand, start a conversation. Thanks for sharing our show. If you've got $5 extra a month laying around and you want to help keep the podcast going, please go to our Patreon or our Substack and sign up as a supporter. That helps keep us going without ads or sponsors. Ketamine Insights is co-hosted by Molly Dunn and Lynn Schneider. Our music is by Solid State Symphony. Until next time, remember to advocate for yourself and never ration your joy.